This is one of the most important concepts of ground and pound. If you do your ground and pound just as normal rolling or taking someone down as holding them, you're doing it wrong. And it has to be trained for MMA. It can't be trained jiu-jitsu. It can't be trained wrestling. It has to be all put together with the strikes as well. If you don't drill your ground and pound with strikes, you're not going to get good at doing ground and pound in fights. You got to drill in training what you want to do in the fight. And we're going to get straight into it today with the concepts of ground and pound. And there's two main things. Two things, and that's it. You've just got to get really good at knowing when to switch between the two. One is control, the other is damage. Control is getting a secure position, controlling the hips or the head, so then you can then put damage on. Damage is punches, it is elbows, it can be shoulders, it can be knees to the jaw, even though you can't knee on the floor, but it's still some sort of damage. And you've got to know when to do each one. If you put damage on your opponent, but you've got no control, they're just going to stand up. And if you've got control of your opponent and you don't put any damage on, you're not going to hurt them. But doing these two will then set up your submissions as well. Let me talk you through how it should be. First off, you need some sort of control. We are going to control our opponent. That is with head positioning, or head control, or hip control. If we've got control of those 2 points on your opponent, you're going to keep him on the floor. Once you've got control, that's when you move on to the damage. But when does one stop putting damage on? And that is when you are losing that control. Once you start losing that control, you go back to control. You stop punching. You think about grabbing and getting a good position, controlling the hips. Now once you've got control, you get in a position where you can strike. Damage, damage, damage. Once you're losing control, as you're doing that damage, you go back to control. If you carried on punching them, that is probably when they are going to stand up. And the hardest thing between this concept is grasping when to be controlling and when to do the damage. It takes a lot of time. And I like to float, not force. You're going to use this to then set up submissions if you wish. You're going to put this damage on, and this is then going to leave openings for these submissions to come. You're not going to force anything, and by using these two focus points, your ground and pound will get much better. This is what I did personally, and I just have to get used to losing sometimes within the round or letting my opponent up, because at first it is quite hard. And controls you want to go with is controlling with your legs, because if you can control them with your legs, you then have your limbs free to punch. That is a little concept that I work around in ground and pound, and it is the best way of doing ground and pound. I've done fights where I've taken them down and I've just held them a little bit. I've done fights where I've taken them down and I've done a little bit jiu-jitsu. I've done fights where I've taken them down, not landed anything, and they've got up. But the most entertaining style is putting damage on your opponent, and this is why this is so effective. Because if you are punching people or punching them in the face, it's going to be harder to do the jiu-jitsu. It doesn't quite work as well. As soon as you're getting a punch to the face, you stop thinking about jiu-jitsu. And then that's why this works so good in setting up submissions and not forcing submissions. But that is my concept of ground and pound and what I focus on when on top in MMA. And the only thing I'm really focusing on within MMA is literally control and damage, and just switching between the two. And if the opportunity is there to take a submission, that is when you're going to go for it. But that's how we do things around here, because we're built different. Bish, bash, bosh, pow!